Are you ready?
Good evening, Heckling Fandom. Instead of having some corny saying for you guys tonight, I wanted to read you a quote from Travis Etienne before we get started going. Travis Etienne says, if it wasn't for last year and the fact that he wasn't playing last season with Urban Meyer drama going on, if there was any year to miss, I'm glad I missed that one. So ponder that thought and let's get going. It's time for garbage time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Tonight, we are mocking the mock. How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on around the league. It was a little bit slow earlier in the week, but tonight we're doing a Wednesday show. And if you guys like what you hear on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show here below. You can listen to us here and watch us here on YouTube. Tune in on podcast versions of the show on TuneIn, Apple, Google, Iheartradio, and anywhere else you hear podcasts. And if you want to leave us voicemails, you can leave them at www.garbagetimef.com, where you can also just scream at us and we'll play it live on the show. So without further ado, Ryan, let's get into the news because we got quite the list of news to get into.
News updates.
First, a little bit of news that we have tonight before we get into any NFL news is that the Sabotage mock draft has been scheduled. We will be doing that on April 25th and 26th. And if you've never seen that format, tune in and watch us suffer. It is something absolutely amazing to watch. You looking forward to it, Ryan?
Oh, I am looking forward to it.
You got your boards ready for it?
Nope. And it's hard to even put a lot of time and energy into it when you know you're just going to get screwed and you're just going to be winging it anyway. So
yeah, absolutely. It'll be fun though, and winging it's the best way, especially if drunk Ryan comes to the show.
Always a good time.
It's absolutely always a good time. So first little bit of news that we have tonight is the elusive Baker Mayfield clip that came out on a podcast earlier this week. So Ryan, what did you hear about this?
Yeah, so I saw that you had sent it in the group chat or whatever, and I went and looked it up. It was like a weird podcast, and I forget whose podcast it was, but
it was You Never Know.
Pretty much says, he definitely feels disrespected by the Browns, that they told him they were going to do one thing, then went and did something else. 4 different coaches in 4 different seasons, and he said he felt like he gave that team and that city everything he could, and he's kind of walking away with no regrets there. But he also indicated he has no idea where he's going to go. So
there is rumblings that Seattle's potentially looking at him. I don't know if that is the case because the draft's here in a few weeks. And I think they want to assess their options. I think if he does get moved, it will be during the draft or after the draft. I think the Browns are just going to have to hang on to him, unfortunately. So that awkward situation continues in both of those fields.
That was a question I was going to ask you. So you definitely think he gets traded after the draft or during?
I don't foresee him getting traded before the draft. Do you think Seattle's a good fit for him for fantasy?
I could see it, yeah. I mean, and you have Pete Carroll there, who's kind of one of the big issues that Russell Wilson has. Pete Carroll kind of wants to pound the rock, run the ball. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Baker wouldn't be a bad almost, you would have him as a game manager basically. And I think he can fill in just fine in that role.
Yeah, I agree with that. Next little bit of news we have here tonight too is Derek Carr is extended 3 years, $121.5 million contract. That is a shitload of money. Where does this put him among NFL quarterbacks? And is this the right move for the Raiders going forward?
Yeah, so based on what I had read, it puts him $40.5 million per year. So ranked number 5 in average annual salary among current NFL quarterbacks. this past season he was playing like it seemed like he was doing really well, and then just crashed and burned. Finished the season with 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and 13 fumbles. And I really like Derek Carr, so I hope, with the addition of Devontae Adams, that made, because he probably had, with Renfro and Wall, like he had a very talented receiving group this year. So hopefully we could see him earn that top 5 pay that he's getting. Last season finished QB 13 in fantasy. So kind of not quite in the QB1 conversation for fantasy. With the addition of Devontae Adams, do you foresee him getting there?
I think he's got the potential to be somewhere between 10 and 12. I don't see him breaking into the top 12, even with Devontae Adams there. Honestly, I think this is going to be a little bit of an experience for the Raiders this year. Not for the fact that they don't have the correct weapons there, but I just have a strange feeling it's not going to mesh very well. There's some pretty tough teams in that division, although they could get into some shootouts, so maybe I will reconsider that. There's really a lot going for them, but just my gut's telling me he's not going to break into the top 10, and I think I'm going to look elsewhere. And absolutely, how rude of us. We haven't even asked Ron Seymour how it's going to go. Ron, how's it going to go for Derek Carr and the Raiders?
Do you know
what's interesting?
So looking at football stats really quick, based on what I have, so he was ranked number 13. Only two quarterbacks in the top 10 threw more passing yards than he did. Oh, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4.
So going into this offseason, do you really think he's kind of under the radar then?
No, I still agree with you. I think he's going to finish probably in that 12-ish range. He'll have QB1 weeks, but you're going to kind of have to matchup pick. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, and let's get into the highlight of what was on the thumbnail of tonight's video, Deebo Samuel. So they're really – the wheels are really rolling on the tracks for this story currently. So Deebo earlier last week took the 49ers off his social media because that's what we do in the modern age when you are in a contract dispute. It was reported that they offered him a running back kind of contract, but he's looking for $25 million a year. And some outlets are saying that they are pondering options for him. Do you think he ultimately gets traded?
No. Nope. I think they pay him. They can thank all the crazy wide receiver signings that have happened this offseason for that number he's giving them. And unfortunately for them, it's coming right when he's entering his final year. So it is contract time. I mean, the guy, 1,400 receiving yards last season with 6 touchdowns, averaging 6 yards per carry rushing with another 8 touchdowns. I don't see how you send that dude away.
It's really interesting for the fact that Deebo Samuel, I think, is the most likely to be traded out of the guys currently out there. I mean, Terry McLaurin has not had contract discussions with the Washington Commanders. I think they will get into that with him. They've got nothing on that offense to speak of, so they absolutely need to wrap a contract offer up for him. I don't see the Titans trading A.J. Brown either. They're competing right now, so that just wouldn't make absolutely any sense for them. And they already let Julio go. And they just brought in another weapon too. So it just absolutely wouldn't make any sense for him. And on top of that, you don't get rid of someone like Deebo Samuel when you're looking to establish potentially a second-year quarterback. We don't know if Jimmy G will be the quarterback this year. They're looking to move in a different direction potentially. So why would you trade your best weapon on that offense? I mean, yes, I understand you have George Kittle there, but you're looking to change the avenue eventually here. So what's your thought on that quarterback situation? And do you think that makes it less likely that, as you stated, Deebo gets traded?
Yeah, I think they're looking to move Jimmy G. I think I read if they do that, it would clear up about $25 million in salary cap space.
Mm-hmm.
So then you look at how much Deebo wants. I'm pretty sure they have to pay Nick Bosa this year or next. I think he's due soon. So they have, if I think in order to extend and sign Deebo, they have to move on from Jimmy G.
And it just wouldn't make sense if Trey Lance was the quarterback of that team to take away, as we stated, kind of the weapon that makes that offense run as of last year. He was the running back. He was the wide receiver. He was proficient in both of those roles. They didn't take him off the field, and he was finally healthy and stable for them. There's this perception around Deebo Samuel that he can't stay healthy. But in all reality, since he's come to the league from college, he's only missed a game or two every single season. So he's on the field quite often. And I honestly think he's worth that money. And they can thank Christian Kirk and the Jaguars for that.
And that's exactly what it is. I mean, he did only play 7 games last season.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how you could be crazy concerned about injuries when the guy had 77 receptions last year and 59 rushes and was relatively healthy all season. Yeah, right now the 49ers are only sitting at $1.6 million in salary cap space.
So that's something else to consider. But as we've seen with teams like the Saints, it kind of just feels like salary cap is absolute fucking imagination land now. It just doesn't seem to matter.
With Deebo set to make a whopping $4.8 million this year on his current contract. So you could see why he's pushing for the money.
I'm sitting along the lines with you here too. I don't believe Deebo is going to be moved before the draft.
Nope.
And if I was to surmise, and I want to ask you about this, should he be moved though? What teams do you think would be interested in acquiring him? Who can afford him, and who would be willing to give up the draft picks for him?
Well, the Jets, obviously, I think they have the money and the draft capital to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Really,
and an offensive coordinator that's played with him. But don't worry, I won't let the homerism bleed through right now, so we'll let you focus on other teams.
They're the only team I could think of that, like, I mean, the Patriots are very wide receiver needy, but we don't have the money or the draft capital to be able to secure that. I think really it's the Jets that would stand out to me. That would be the main ones that could do it.
Could you see a team like the Colts potentially acquire him?
Possibly.
They seem like a team that's competitive enough and looking to get to the playoffs right now. I mean, they acquired Matt Ryan. I believe they have some cap space. That could make sense for a team like that, but what kind of package would the 49ers want for it anyway? Would it be something similar to a Tyreek Hill package, or it would be a shitload of draft picks, or something like the Jets package that was being offered, 2 2s and a 3, or is it going to be even more? Are they going to want a high-end first-round pick just because of his youth?
It would be a lot. I think you're looking at high-end first-round pick, or you'd have to package a lot, I think. But if I was a 49ers fan, I think I would have a meltdown if they traded him.
I really think you would see that offense go a little bit stagnant. I don't think it would completely fall off, but Trey Lance may have a little bit of a hard year if they traded away Deebo Samuel. They would have to rely on Kittle, similar to how the Chiefs are going to have to do that with their weapons now that Tyreek Hill has gone too, and spread the ball around. They'd have to rely on Trey Lance's legs, the running game, and ultimately that may hinder the fantasy value of a lot of players on that team. And I think even if Deebo Samuel left that team, to be honest, his fantasy value would be hindered a little bit too. I think he may still be worth a first-round pick in 12-team formats, but I think he would slide down boards a bit.
Yeah, because there's no guarantee that wherever he went, they would use him in the same capacity that the 49ers chose to use him. Exactly. Or have the offensive ability to do that, you know?
Right. And guys watching the show, too, if you have any questions for fantasy football or the upcoming draft or free agency or anything, feel free to leave your comments and questions right here on the show, too. We're more than welcome to answer them, too. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching this, too. Next little story I wanted to get into with you, too, is Travis Etienne, the guy that I gave the quote from the beginning of this episode about his clone of an old head coach, says he is 85 to 90% recovered from the limb fracture injury. Do you believe he's going to be ready for off-season programs, and do you have high hopes for him in this upcoming year?
Yeah, so I was looking into it. He is participating right now in the off-season conditioning program. Said he's doing a majority of the stuff on the field, so whatever that means, I don't know whether that means 52% or 85%. But he is participating with that. Says, like you said, feels 85 to 90% healthy. It says he's a little sore if he goes hard the day before, but for the most part, he's claiming he doesn't even notice that he has a screw in his foot. So it's looking like a good sign for him to play this season against the Jaguars. I'm still waiting to see how they use him with that backfield they got going on. So it's going to be interesting to see.
It is going to be interesting because James Robinson is coming off a major injury too, so he may actually get the first crack at that job because they may have to ease Robinson back into that. Robinson's also on the youthful side of the NFL too. The ACL injuries are not as bad as they used to be either, but plain and simple, a running back uses their legs. Players use their legs in football, so it's going to take a little bit of time for him to reacclimated, and that may give Travis Etienne the potential to earn this job here. And I think they're going to look to use him in a similar role that their clone of a head coach last year would have used him, which was the third down role, which is a lot of potential for the Jaguars because they don't have other players there right now either. I think they may have to use him as the early bell cow, at least early on in the season. You may see those returns early and see it maybe fade off as James Robinson is ready later on in the season, and you see more of a split backfield. But as we saw with Denver last year, there can be potential for a split backfield to work. We've also seen this with Cleveland, so I think you can look at drafting him fairly high and be confident in him.
Yeah.
Nothing to add to that, or did I just blow your mind?
You covered it. You killed it.
All right, let's go into another player's injury then too. Tee Higgins had a surgery last month. It was to repair a labrum. Are you worried about setbacks with this player? They were talking about him in wide receiver one potentiality this year. So,
no,
what's your thoughts on this?
Everything I read said they were expecting him to be ready for before training camp this summer. I think as long as he's up and going and fully able to participate in the training camp, I'm not really worried at all.
Okay. And do you believe he's going to fall into that wide receiver one range?
Ooh.
I mean, they've already got one wide receiver one who's a top 5 on that team. So can that offense sustain 2?
I don't. Oof. What do you think?
I think he's more of a wide receiver 2, falling between that 15 to 20 range. I would take him safely in that spot, but I can see why people would like him as a wide receiver 1. I mean, that offense is going to want to chuck it next year. Joe Mixon's getting a little bit older, and they've beefed up the offensive line to protect him when he drops back to pass. So I could see him getting numbers like that.
I mean, last season he finished wide receiver 24 in PPR leads. Mm-hmm. And that was playing 14 games, averaging 15. So, if he plays a full season, yeah, I think wide receiver 2. I think you could see him top 20, maybe in the 15 ballpark.
Okay. All right. With that, let's move on to a running back that is still on the free agency market and starting to visit with teams. I think he wants to get signed before the draft starts, so he's not left out of a job with no money. Melvin Gordon was discussing a potential deal with the Ravens and also visited Miami, I believe, today. So what's your thoughts on Melvin Gordon? Is he going to come away with a job somewhere, and is his fantasy value going to be good anywhere?
Why is Miami still looking at running backs? I'm so confused.
I have no idea. They've got enough of them.
How many do they need? All right. Well, if he goes to Miami, just forget about it because there's going to be no fantasy value back there with all the mouths they have to feed. I like him going to the Ravens, though. I think he could be their main guy on that team.
Even with their running backs coming back from injury?
Yep.
Really? That's kind of interesting. I think the better fit for him, as you've already stated, would be the Ravens, but I do believe he would fall into a committee there. Not that it wouldn't be effective for him. I mean, he was somewhat effective in Denver last year. If he goes back to Denver, that's going to be highly disappointing for that backfield. I like the potential of that team and the bell cow running back position there for that team. So I'd like to see Melvin Gordon not take away carries from someone else. Don't get me wrong. He's a good running back, but he's going to be a change of pace at this point of the season, no matter where he goes, injury excluded. You got nothing for me?
No, I agree. No, I think you're right. You're right. He's not going to be the main guy there. I don't know why I said that, but I definitely think he would have more value there than with the Dolphins. I hate that backfield so much, mainly because I had Gaskin last year, but yeah, it wasn't good.
What you're saying is that backfield depresses the hell out of you, and you're going to try to stay away from it this year.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah, we'll see about that. All right. Speaking of the Ravens, too, let's talk about Lamar Jackson, too. He's one of the quarterbacks coming up that could potentially have a contract here in a few years. Although NFL analysts are talking about him potentially being on the franchise tag for multiple years here. Is he going to be the next quarterback that's going to be on the franchise tag for 3 years straight? Like Captain Kirk?
I think so. I was reading a weird article where, like, it was the GM or the owner or somebody was basically saying, like, he doesn't want to get paid till he wins a Super Bowl. Like, he has no interest in contract discussions until he succeeds.
So this is really the case where he's just going to be loyal to the Ravens, and so they can put more weapons around him?
It's sounding like that, but then again, you know this better than me, but even the franchise tag gets very expensive after the first year.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk made a ton of money off this. He did it for 3 years straight, and then he went out to the Vikings and got a guaranteed contract and just seems to be able to siphon more money off them every single year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world for Lamar Jackson to do. The only scary thing there is he's a running style of quarterback, so I guess the injury potential for him is there too. So in the long term, I guess he could lose out on money unless he ended up taking a bigger deal. And these quarterback contracts seem to be getting bloated lately.
Yeah, if I'm Lamar, I'm taking the contract, especially like you said, a running style quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But what do I know? He's betting on himself.
He is betting on himself. One guy that wouldn't want to bet on himself, though, is, as we already stated earlier, Terry McLaurin, who currently has no contract offer from the Washington Commanders. What the hell are they thinking? They've got to get him wrapped up. This is his last year on the team. Are they going to give him the contract?
I don't know. Like, I was starting to think that it was... I don't know. I was starting to really get the vibe that they were going to be moving on from him. I don't know why they haven't re-signed him yet. But
do you think he's someone that could be moved before the draft?
I don't know. Like, I guess it's going to come down to, is he the kind of player that's going to be willing to play if he's not signed to a new contract this coming season?
I'm more along the thought line that I think he wants to play as much as he can to get that big contract. He really has been silent on this topic, and I don't know if he wants to play there long term or head somewhere else. I don't know. He's kind of an anomaly in the league where you have players like Baker Mayfield bitching about what the Browns did to him. You really haven't heard that much from him. I really don't know his personality, to be honest.
I would almost think, like, can't the Washington use some good press at this point? Like, sign your star player.
You would think so, instead of siphoning all this money away from the league and ticket sales.
Yeah, like, get some good press out there. Some, like, a positive story. Maybe. Yeah,
you would think. All right. One of the last stories I want to talk about here is Greg Corral, NFL analyst, is saying he wouldn't be shocked if 5 quarterbacks were taken in the first round of this NFL draft. Do you see the number being that high this year?
Well, I know you and I had talked to it in the mock where you said it's a shallow pool, and there's so many super needy teams at the quarterback position that you could see them going. I mean, you had 4 in your mock?
3 or 4, yeah.
And I
believe it was 4 in the first round.
And I think I only had 2. Looking at it now, I think I was probably a little low. I think we're looking at the 3 to 4 range.
Yeah, and remember, the narrative is that this quarterback pool this year sucks, and there's no other way to put it. But there was also a narrative the year that Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes came out that it was a shallow quarterback pool too. And JJ would argue that Mitch Trubisky is going to be the champion of the Steelers coming up here too. So that could still be a great quarterback class. It already is with those 2 in the first round.
Very true. Yeah, and they could do all the analytics and combines that they want. There's no way to know until, the greatest quarterback of all time was drafted in the 6th round. So
going all the way back to our early childhood, I see.
yeah.
Okay, too. And there's also been some, we'll say, slanderous articles out this week. 2 of them from Over the Cap. One about the Bears, who say they're in a complete teardown, which I think JJ would completely disagree with that narrative. He says that they're just retooling. I don't know what I think about that. Do you think the Bears are just retooling? And do you think that offense is going to have a lack of offensive production for fantasy football?
I feel like retooling and rebuilding is just a play on words, and it means the same thing.
So it's not going to be a Band-Aid effect. They're rebuilding.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't love the Bears this year. That's for sure. They're coming in with they're going to have their rookie quarterback this year, probably starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're rebuilding. They're retooling to rebuild.
And another report about my team said that the Jets missed out on many free agents this offseason. So we plugged 6 premium holes. So Over the Cap, you can shut the fuck up. We filled the holes that we needed to. We have flexibility in the draft. And we brought in a few Pro Bowlers and guys that have played in the Super Bowl. So what the hell are you talking about? Keep your dirty names out of your mouth, okay? Yes, I understand we have a jaded past. People like to make fun of the Jets, but keep your name out of our damn mouth, okay?
I think you mean keep our name out of your mouth. I think that's how the saying goes.
Yeah, it's that upstate jargon.
You guys did miss out on some wide receivers there that you tried for, but like you said, I think you guys had the less sexy signings that are still highly effective that will make your team better.
And there's still a few weeks to the draft, so maybe we will pull off a move. But hey, it's important to build the trenches and bring in those tight ends. We had none of them last year. So again, bury that narrative. It's not an embarrassment to go to the Jets anymore. We actually have people that want to go there that have played in the Super Bowls. Ryan, is there anything else you saw earlier in this week that you want to discuss before we get into these mock the mocks?
No, let's go to the mock. Except I would love if Gilmore wanted to come back to the Patriots. So go ahead, Stephon Gilmore. Feel free to return, and I won't mind at all.
All right, so without further ado, let's mock these mocks. So, Ryan, like we've already stated, we are 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, and we've already gave the heckling fandom a few mock drafts. So let's go to the perceived experts and mock their mock drafts and see what we think of these mock drafts and what these offensive players would do for fantasy football. Not that you can't exclude the defensive players, because I'd like your opinion on all the drafts. So would you like to start with Lance Zierlein, who is thought of as one of the more accurate mock draft posters?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, so let's start right from the top here. Can you see it on the screen?
Yep.
All right, so at number 1 here, he's got quite the surprise with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trayvon Walker being taken at number 1. There's a lot of smoke surrounding this right now. Do you believe this is the actual direction that the Jaguars may go?
Yeah, but I think some people are overthinking it. I still think it's Aiden Hutchinson. I think people are overthinking it a little bit and just want to be different in some of their mocks, but I think it's Aiden Hutchinson. I really do.
Okay, and at number 2 here, he has Aiden Hutchinson going to Detroit. I could see these two being synonymous, being flipped here. Interestingly here at number 3, he's got Evan Neal. Do you think this could do something very important for the Houston Texans offense? Maybe help the running game out?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said in my mock, I could see the Texans trading out of this pick as well. But if not, he'll fit great on the O-line, especially if they're going to give their quarterback a chance to be successful there. So I could totally see them going O-line if they're still here at this pick.
Okay. Up here at pick number 4-2, we have the Jets selecting Sauce Gardner, which if the premium pass rushers were out, I wouldn't absolutely hate this pick, but I think we would also need to take a pass rusher at 10 and then trade back into the first round to get a wide receiver, which I did do in my last mock draft. So you like moves like this too?
Yeah, so like in my mock, I had Sauce Gardner. I admitted I thought I had him going a little too high. I mean, too low. But I had you guys taking him at 10. Like you said, I thought you guys would go more pass rusher here. So that's why I was thinking Thibodeau. But I don't think you go wrong with Sauce Gardner here either.
Okay, and this spot here with the Giants here at 5, I found kind of interesting. I believe that the two players that they're going to select here is going to be a pass rusher and an offensive lineman. I think they want to build the trenches here. Do you think they should take an offensive lineman here at this spot, though, early?
Yeah. I think I had them taking Icky here, which might be who this. I can't remember if he has them taking Icky at 8. 7. Yeah. So he has them taking. Yeah. So like, I think it's gonna be offensive line, one of those. I just have them going Icky first, so that because the Panthers could use the help on the O-line too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Panthers are more likely to steal Icky from out from under them than they are. Well, I don't even think Thibodeau's going to be there. So if Thibodeau's there, I guess they would take him just because he fell that far, I guess. Because then the Panthers would probably take him, right?
I mean, potentially, but as we've seen in other mock spots, do you think number 6 is kind of a sweet spot for a quarterback to be taken or potentially for the Carolina Panthers to trade out? Is this where we're going to start seeing fantasy relevance, especially for dynasty leagues? Is this the sweet spot?
It could be. I did have Pickett mocked to the Panthers here, so it could work out for the Giants. If Thibodeau falls that far, they take him. Panthers take a quarterback, then the Giants snag Icky anyway. So I don't hate it.
Okay, and as we've already stated with pick 7-2 under Lance Zierlein's mock draft, I really like them taking an offensive lineman, whether it be at 5 or 7-2. An offensive lineman could really potentially help Saquon Barkley in that offense. Yes. For the fact that they need to beef up that line to keep him plugging along. I think they need a change of pace back too, potentially. I think that could help him out a little bit to keep him healthy, but beefing up the line will make him more productive and make him a better player for fantasy football, someone you can be more confident in, I think, down the line. What's your thoughts on Garrett Wilson to Atlanta?
I like it. They need to fill the vacancies that were left there. So I'm a fan.
All right, we're going further down this draft. Derek Stingley at 9. I just really do not like Derek Stingley Jr. at all. Honestly, he had one great season his freshman year and just hasn't put up the same production. I don't know whether that's due to injury or scheme the last 2 years. It's just I don't like him. What's your thoughts on Stingley to Seattle? I honestly think they'd rather go potentially quarterback here.
Yeah, quarterback, or I think there's better cornerbacks available there too that might be more established than Stingley. Yeah, I don't know. I don't love it.
Okay, number 10, Jermaine Johnson. I don't hate that considering the pick that they had. Now, here is a very interesting one for dynasty leagues. The Washington Commanders selecting Drake London at number 11 to pair with Terry McLaurin in this spot. What's your thoughts on them potentially bringing in someone to take pressure off of Terry McLaurin? And do you like Drake London in this spot with Carson Wentz at quarterback?
I like it. I had him going to the Washington Commanders in our mock, I believe. I think getting someone to take the heat off of McLaurin once they re-sign him like they should would be a great play and would instantly upgrade their offense.
Okay, in this draft too, Kyle Hamilton falls down to number 12. I do believe Kyle Hamilton is going to fall out of the top 10. That's at least what the narratives are saying the last few weeks. There's a lot of value in safety in the second round too, so I think teams may look to go other places, potentially in the draft, especially in this first round. So I think Lance Zierlein is right along where he should be in this mock draft up to this point. Houston selects a defensive tackle that is not relevant to fantasy football, so we'll move on. Baltimore selects an edge. Philadelphia selects a corner. So do you like where this draft is going so far, Ryan?
Yeah, just let those offensive guys keep falling down.
And that's exactly what happened here. The New Orleans Saints didn't need to trade up to get a potential quarterback here, which is kind of interesting because Malik Willis is here for them. Do you like this pick for them?
Yeah, I think he fits the kind of style that the Saints have started to lean towards a little bit in their quarterbacks with like Taysom Hill, drawing a blank on the other guy's name, Jameis Winston, the scrambling kind of quarterback. And Malik Willis fits that profile.
Just refer to him as a lobster thief. Everyone in the Heckling fan will know who he is.
That's true.
Yeah, I think Malik Willis in this spot would be an absolute great value for the New Orleans Saints, who I think will package those picks and end up going up. I had mentioned before that they could keep this pick and help fill out the roster, which is in salary cap hell, perceived salary cap hell, because they just keep kicking the can down the road every few years. But I think they're going to need to package these picks as they want to go up and get Malik Willis. I think he ultimately will be drafted in the top 10. So this is where I may criticize this mock draft just a little bit. But should he fall this far, this would be a great value for a team potentially looking for a quarterback. Trevor Penning to the Los Angeles Chargers would absolutely help this running game on an already loaded offense. What's your thoughts of this pick right here? Would this help a very fantasy relevant offense?
Yeah. I think almost, I would say like 90% of the mocks I see have Trevor Penning go to the Chargers. They nailed the draft previously, getting Slater, so they're going to get someone else to play opposite him, and it would immediately make that line better. Keep Herbert upright, maybe not make him so he doesn't have to rush so much. I think it's a solid pick.
All right, moving further down, this is where the Philadelphia Eagles select their wide receiver because they have had ineptitude outside of their number one wide receiver, which is Devontae Smith. I think we could say that they are lacking a number two wide receiver. So what's your thoughts on Treylon Burks potentially to the Eagles? Could he be an interesting dynasty weapon for Jalen Hurts in this offense?
I like it. He's a little bit bigger. I mean, I feel like not even just Devontae Smith, that their receiving core is a little small.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be good for them to get some size out there.
All right. At number 19, too, the Saints get even more value with Jameson Williams, who is being picked here at number 19. I really see him rising up draft boards now. I think the perception is around the league is that he's at least healthy enough to be considered a top-end pick. I think he's by far the most talented wide receiver of this draft, could potentially be the most elite. I believe I heard someone earlier referencing him as his ceiling is up with the Angels. I think that's a really great reference for him. You just got to hope that he comes back from this injury healthy. You may not have him for the first 4 games, but he's teetering right along that line, I think, of being potentially picked in the top 10. Like, I think some teams really could consider it. What's your thought on Jameson Williams potentially rising up the boards, and is this a good pick in this mock draft?
Yeah, I think like you said, it all depends on where teams think he's going to end up. Like if they because every first round pick's always a gamble. I mean, you've seen the Patriots take a wide receiver that ended up doing nothing. But if you have someone that is that next level of talent, it's probably worth sitting on him for a year. The Saints might not even be planning on being super competitive next year. They're kind of entering a weird phase. So to lock up a top wide receiver for 2023 isn't so bad.
Okay, and down here at number 20, the hometown guy, Kenny Pickett, gets to stay in Pittsburgh and play with the Steelers. Is this something that you could actually see happening?
Yeah, I had the Steelers taking a quarterback, as did you. I had him taking Malik, you had him taking Matt Corral, but I do definitely think that the Steelers take a quarterback.
Now, for fantasy football and dynasty formats, should the board fall like this for quarterbacks going for these teams, do you like Kenny Pickett going to Pittsburgh better than Malik Willis going potentially to the Saints for dynasty, or who would you like better in this spot?
I mean, JJ would argue that Kenny Pickett will never get a chance to play because Trubisky's going to have an MVP season.
That's true.
But I think I would like Pickett more, to be honest.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Dwayne Haskins passed away this past weekend too. Yeah, so blessings to his family and prayers go out to them too. So this team could use something to uplift them, like another young quarterback coming in and them shouldering the load of what's going to be heartbreaking for this team this year. Absolutely tragic. So as bad as it is, they could definitely use a little bit more help there to shoulder that load. And obviously, they're going to need a little bit of competition for Mitch Trubisky now. So prayers to that family. Next up, too, we have the Patriots picking a guard. I don't see anything exciting here.
No, but it's, get Matt Jones some protection. The Patriots are very good at scouting talent on offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
They're not great at scouting talent on wide receivers. So I could see them doing what they know, taking offensive linemen and then snagging some wide receivers day 2 and 3.
All right, and at pick 22 here, we have a defensive tackle, not fantasy relevant, and unless you like playing defenses in the leagues, which I guess it's relevant, but ultimately not when you're drafting the first round of your dynasty or redraft leagues. Now, here is a very interesting one.
Yeah,
this one caught my attention.
Yeah, and actually, I had a question for the pick before that too.
We'll go back to that one real quick then.
I think everybody thinks that Green Bay is going to take at least one wide receiver. I believe this mock has them taking a defensive player, then a wide receiver later on.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, though, do you think they would go wide receiver first to try jump, take whoever the best wide receiver is earlier? Or do you see them taking defensive and then letting the Chiefs and the Bills and some of those guys having a chance at snagging some more wide receivers from them?
With the way the board fell in this mock draft, I could see them potentially taking the defensive player first, but this is a very defensive dominant draft where I also see the benefit of taking a wide receiver here. Yes, the wide receiver position is very strong in this draft too, but I think you're going to want to make Aaron Rodgers happy. So I could see them taking the wide receiver first and then letting the board fall to them at defense. But yes, I do believe they'll take a defensive player with one of these picks and the other one will be a wide receiver.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so now back to the interesting pick that I was mentioning in Lance Zierlein's mock draft. He has Kansas City trading up with the Arizona Cardinals and selecting Chris Olave, which is kind of interesting because there is now some rumors floating out there that potentially the Cardinals could be interested in taking a wide receiver in this draft too, which at this point in the draft, you may have 4 or 5 off the board currently here, and teams may be looking to get up there and get this guy. Is this a trade that you could see happening, or do you think the Cardinals could select someone here, or are they just blowing smoke to get some draft picks?
I could see it happening because, for you and I both in our mock, we had the Cardinals taking defensive players. Mm-hmm. So if the Cardinals think that they did slide back and still get one of the defensive players they want and also some extra picks, I could see them doing it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense too. And Olave seems to be going up boards too. So him going to Kansas City would be an interesting fit. He's very fast. I think he's crisp. He's played it with 2 different quarterbacks at Ohio State too. So I am very interested to see where his dynasty value would fall being with the Kansas City Chiefs, because I don't think it's an outlook we've really discussed for it too. So should he fall to that team, I think it'll be an interesting discussion to have before the rookie dynasty drafts.
Yeah.
24, he's got Bernard Raymond going to the Dallas Cowboys, which would help out Pollard and Zeke in that running game. It'll be interesting to see how that backfield works out again. Yep. A quarterback to 25 at Buffalo. This is a team I think that could potentially take a running back. You already talked about that. Did you want to cover that really quick?
Yeah, so in this mock, I had the Bills taking Breece Hall. Personally, I don't think I was a huge fan of it. I think Singletary was coming on at the end of the year. I think a lot of people disagree with me. And clearly the Bills still are looking for a running back. They were trying to sign McKissick. They've been in some other running back conversations. So clearly they think they're still lacking in that area. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him do it.
Him going to that team will definitely shake up dynasty mock drafts too, because along the rookie sense too, because he's being perceived as probably the top running back currently. There's a little bit of debate with that, but he kind of would fall into that committed back role.
Yep.
Some could see him falling into the role of Jonathan Taylor eventually too, taking work away from these guys too. I would be more along that line with him, but you said he could potentially fall into that committee role. So is that what you would see happening? And would that affect your thoughts on potentially where he'd be ranked among rookie running backs?
Yeah, I think, but it's also a very pass heavy offense. So if he gets into that pass catching role, especially in PPR leagues, I mean, he could be a stud.
Agreed. The Titans are here picking Devin Lloyd. The Tampa has Travis Jones being picked here at 27. And here's an interesting selection that I have mocked a few different ways. Christian Watson to the Green Bay Packers. So this is what you alluded to. A lot of people have the Green Bay Packers selecting a wide receiver for the fact that Devontae Adams has been traded away from the team, and they obviously need somewhere else for Aaron Rodgers to throw to. And a lot of people are liking to draft Christian Watson to the Chiefs or Packers. Do you think he ultimately ends up with one of these two teams, and is he going to fall into the first round?
Yeah, I think I'm finding it interesting because most of the rankings I've read have him ranked pretty low. A lot of the mocks I saw I don't think had him going in the first. Did this mock have like Jahan Dotson go yet?
No, not yet up to this point.
See, I had Green Bay taking him. But who knows? Who knows?
There's a lot of wide receivers in this draft.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be anybody with a pool that deep. It's going to be the teams are going to be able to pick based on like small little things that they want in a wide receiver that might not be incorporated into determining rankings.
You're really going to get to pick and choose your favorite wide receivers in dynasty rookie drafts this year. So it's going to be really interesting, and you really have all the flavors of the rainbow to pick from.
Yes.
All right, here is where Breece Hall was selected to the Cardinals. I think this would absolutely destroy his fantasy value because there's currently another running back on that roster that I believe is the bell cow. So what's your thoughts on the Cardinals trading up in this mock draft and ending up with this pick? Actually, this is a trade back from Kansas City.
I don't like it. It makes it easier for me because I have the second pick in our dynasty, and I wouldn't have to debate taking Breece Hall anymore. Because I wouldn't do it.
So let's go take a look at their running back situation currently. So on the roster, they have James Conner and Eno Benjamin. James Conner is really someone that has shown that he can be a bell cow on two different teams now. He did it with Pittsburgh. And when given the opportunity for the Cardinals last year, he was their bell cow as well. They also have Eno Benjamin, who is a YouTube star based off of one play and is potentially a player that the Cardinals could get more work this year now that he could be the change of pace back. Do you criticize this pick for that reason? Do you think Breece Hall can actually end up on Arizona?
There's no telling what teams are going to do. A part of me wonders if teams see him just falling this far, if they decide that they want to jump in on it, get that fifth-year option on a player that talented. You know what I mean? They might be willing to do it, even though it might not be the biggest need on their team at the current time.
Okay. And then here at pick 30, Boya Mafe, so another defensive player. Cincinnati has taken a cornerback, Kyler Gordon. And interestingly enough, Detroit selects Matt Corral at number 32. What's your thoughts of these later QBs on the draft? Do you have any perception on them at all?
No, I really don't. It's going to come down to what the team's like. I know the Lions are looking. I think you had them. I think you had the Lions taking Sam Howell. But I think Matt Corral, if he's available, probably is the better quarterback at the moment. So I could see it happening. I don't hate it.
So what do you think of Lance Zierlein's draft?
I like it. I think I was surprised. I don't think he had as many wide receivers going early like we did.
No, I don't think so either. All right, now let's take a quick look at Peter Schrager's too. Peter Schrager is more of social media caster, I would guess. He kind of casts a much wider net, and he can kind of perceive what people think better from a social aspect, I believe. And he looks into the thought process of when he's interviewing these GMs and insiders. So he's not necessarily a mock analyst per se, but he does this every year, and he hasn't done a bad job of this. So I wanted to give a different mindset with this. So let's go over his mock draft too. So what Peter Schrager has for us, as I pull it back up, going from pick number 1, is Aiden Hutchinson. This is more along the lines of what you were thinking.
Yeah. Which makes sense when you say the type of the social media, things like that. It's kind of like the consensus, what everyone thinks is going to happen. So it made sense.
Yep. And number 2, he's got Kayvon Thibodeau, which is interesting because Detroit could go a few different directions with this pick. I believe Sauce Gardner could potentially be a decent pick for them too. I think they may want to shore up that secondary. Kayvon has been going down boards because there's been a perception that I don't know if it's that he's selfish or if he's too self-centered or if he's lazy. There's a lot of different perceptions, and I think it's because teams want him to fall down draft boards, and I don't think most of them are true. What's your thoughts on Kayvon Thibodeau? Is it all bullshit?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Here at number 3, too, they've also got Evan Neal being selected. Ultimately, I do believe Houston is going to select an offensive lineman. They have needs all over the board, but if they want to see if Davis Mills is truly a good quarterback and their future quarterback, why not take a future left tackle, whether that be Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal? So I think this would be a good pick here. Going down to number 4, we have Sauce Gardner going to the Jets, which isn't highly fantasy relevant. They were one of the worst defenses in the league, so you are not going to be using them for fantasy football next year. And this goes along the lines of Peter Schrager having Ike Ekwonu drafted to the Giants, them selecting that tackle that you were talking about, the Giants selecting first here at number 5. Again, helping Saquon.
Yep.
At number 6, this is what I was talking about. Kenny Pickett being selected by the Carolina Panthers. Do you think this is ultimately where he ends up?
Well, look, I was able to pull up our mock in between this last one and this one we were doing, and that's actually where I had him going, so I hope it happens. And I could see it happening. You mentioned that kind of being the sweet spot where we may see a quarterback go. I think the common consensus is right now that Sam Darnold is not the answer. So I think we're going to be looking at Carolina to correct that.
And interestingly enough, too, there's a few things in this article I didn't even know, which I kind of wanted to talk about under here, too. It mentions that he played in a West Coast style, which is part of Pitt. Matt Rule also recruited him, too. And you already gave off the perception that he's the most NFL-ready quarterback and could just pick up an offense and go. Do you think that's what he would do should Carolina draft him and he would immediately take that job away from Sam Darnold?
I think it would be a training camp battle. I definitely think the job would be up for the taking, and it would be who performs best in training camp and preseason.
I don't know. I might have to think about that pick for our sabotage mock draft. I don't think I know what I want to do with that yet, too. At number 7, too, the smoke screens do not work. Trayvon Walker goes to the Giants, which is kind of interesting. He's a little bit raw, but he's a good talent. Atlanta picks an edge rusher at number 8, which I think is kind of a sweet spot for a quarterback or a wide receiver. My gut is that they're going to take a wide receiver, probably the top one on their board, too. So for fantasy football outlets, I think this is important to watch, especially for rookie mock drafts. But I do like where Peter Schrager is thinking along the lines of the fact that give Mariota a shot here. But really, what else do you have on the offense? So I do critique this pick a little bit.
Yeah, I just, based on their losses this offseason, I just don't see how they could not take a offensive weapon here.
Right. I was just thinking this could potentially be a spot for Malik Willis, too. Interestingly enough, he's got him continuing to fall down the board here, too. At number 9, Seattle does not select Malik Willis, which I think could be a good spot considering that Locke is currently their quarterback, and I do not believe in Drew Lock. I do not think he will be a good fantasy-relevant quarterback this year. Instead, he's got the Seattle Seahawks selecting Charles Cross. You can never go wrong getting an offensive lineman, and they can definitely use one here because they really want to run the ball on first, second, and third down. That is what that offense is built on and what they're going to have to do to be successful this year.
Yeah. Yep. And the Seahawks, they have issues all over. They have a lot they need to address. Starting an offensive line where you could have the guy for a very long time isn't a bad spot to start rebuilding.
At number 10, Schrager's got the Jets selecting Jamison Williams. This pick would do nothing more than make me sweat and have heart palpitations going into training camp because I would want this guy to stay healthy, and I could just potentially see him being a bust because he's a New York Jet. But this ceiling with this kid is absolutely insane. I don't think ACLs are what they used to be. And the more I watch his film, the more I read up on him, the more I want him. What's your thoughts on potentially this being a fit?
The only thing that I thought about was I didn't know if the Jets would be looking for someone that could kind of day one be out there playing, like compete this year. I'm just not sure if the Jets are okay with waiting a season or if they're looking like kind of a start winning now kind of perspective.
See, I can see this happening, though, too, because they brought in 2 tight ends and they wanted to run those big jumbo packages at the beginning of the season, but couldn't because they had absolute garbage tight ends. Now that they have Uzama, I think they can run these potentially, and I think it would be a good fit here. You can wait on him. They've already got a few wide receivers. They would just have to cross their fingers, stay healthy, and potentially have a future Pro Bowl wide receiver waiting in the wings.
It would be a solid pick. I don't think you can go wrong with it.
No, and I don't think New England could potentially go wrong picking him later should he fall because of injury concerns. I've already mocked him to New England once. He's also got Kyle Hamilton falling out of the top 10. Interestingly, they both have them falling out. Both of these analysts have Kyle Hamilton falling out of the top 10, which is what I did in my last mock draft. So I completely agree with this sentiment. Derek Stingley is getting picked by the Minnesota Vikings at 12. I understand he got a clean bill of health, but I am so scared of Derek Stingley. I understand you could probably pair him with Patrick Peterson, but just something about him just doesn't sit right with me.
It's worth noting the Vikings, I believe, still haven't re-signed Peterson or Alexander, so I think that'll be something to watch for heading into the draft, and that could dictate whether they take Derek Stingley Jr. or not.
I do believe they did re-sign Patrick Peterson, so he should be on that roster.
Not Alexander.
Right. At number 13, Schrager's got Houston selecting Devin Lloyd. They need everything. I could potentially see them maybe picking a wide receiver here too, someone else you could pair with Brandon Cooks. There's not a lot on that offense, and you need to see if Davis Mills is your guy. Although someone with the motor, Devin Lloyd is not a bad pick either. Next at 14, Trevor Penning to the Baltimore Ravens. Not a bad pick. This is a running team, someone that can protect Lamar Jackson. Basically a quarterback in a running back's body. All right, here's an interesting one and a little bit different from some mock drafts. Philadelphia Eagles selecting Drake London. So what's your thoughts on this?
I don't hate it. I could definitely see the Eagles going wide receiver here. Like this description says, Jalen Reagor hasn't kind of lived up to expectations. You pair Smith with another round one wide receiver with talent, it could be a pretty solid game plan. And if they're going to give Jalen Hurts another year to prove himself, you're going to have to give him the tools to do it.
It is a very common theme that Philadelphia selects a wide receiver at the spot. Could you see them going another direction, or would you bet your house on the fact that they're going to select a wide receiver here?
Yeah, so actually I had them taking a defensive tackle here just because of Kotz. They got him back for a year, but he's getting older. But I would not be surprised to see them go wide receiver here.
At number 16, New Orleans selects Garrett Wilson. So there's also a nice theme here of the Saints getting nice quality players. Would he pair well with Michael Thomas?
Yeah, and really the Saints and most of the mocks I've seen have done a really good job at being able to get solid players without having to move up. Just because so many teams ahead of them have defensive needs or offensive line needs, they've been able to snag a weapon without really having to give up anything to move up.
Now, this pick is a little bit strange, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. At number 17, Peter Schrager's got the Los Angeles Chargers selecting Chris Olave. They already have Keenan Allen. They just re-signed Mike Williams, and they just got Josh Palmer, who's perceived as a second-year talent. Is this a little bit of overload here, or do you think there's a spot for him on this offense? Would this kill his dynasty value long term?
I think it would kill it more short term than long term. But I just don't. I would much rather see the Chargers throw someone on the offensive line that's going to be a day one starter and have a lot of longevity. I think Trevor Penning would make more of an immediate difference.
Yeah, someone they compare with Rashawn Slater. I like your mindset there. Although it's a good value pick, and that's a pretty loaded team. It definitely not bad to do and look at. I think that.
If you're looking strictly at value, like it's definitely a very good value pick, but it just for the team's need might not be the best one.
Right, at 18, he's got them selecting Trent McDuffie, not interesting for fantasy football. Number 19, Jordan Davis, so stopping the run with New Orleans, who already has a good defense, potentially a good fantasy defense for you in the upcoming season. Here's a quarterback again for the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 20. It's Malik Willis, and there is a lot of smoke that Mike Tomlin loves him.
I could see that. I'm pretty sure I mocked Malik Willis to Pittsburgh. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I feel like with a lot of mocks now, it's not a matter of if the Steelers take a quarterback, but which quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of it's going to depend too, based on what the Panthers do, might heavily impact. Because did this mock have Kenny Pickett going to the Panthers?
It did, number 6.
And the previous mock had Kenny Pickett falling to the Steelers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's going to depend on what the Panthers do.
Is this a better fit for the two teams?
I think I like the idea of Kenny Pickett on the Steelers more. I don't know why, but I do.
Okay. We'll move on from that now. Again, another boring move from the New England Patriots, selecting Zion Johnson, who has a hybrid ability to play center as well as guard. You can put them all along that line. So nothing exciting for the New England Patriots. Green Bay is selecting wide receiver here. This is really where my mindset has gone, and I like what Peter Schrager did here in the draft. He gives them Treylon Burks. What would he look like in an Aaron Rodgers offense? Would you highly value him? Should he go to the Packers in dynasty formats?
Yes, because someone has to fill the hole left by Devontae Adams. I don't know if one guy is going to take all of that work because that's a lot of work. But he would immediately be. I mean, I'm assuming he'd be on the field for a very large majority of the snaps. So you're definitely looking at a rookie that's going to start to get serious playing time right out of the gate.
Yeah, they said he had a sloppy combine, but I honestly don't think that really matters. He's shown that he can play on the field, did at a high level against Alabama. Arkansas gave him as many touches as he could get because he was one of their most talented players too. So putting him on an Aaron Rodgers-led team would make him an interesting asset for dynasty leagues.
Anyway.
Okay, what's your thoughts on Jahan Dotson at number 3 going to the Arizona Cardinals? Listen, they've got DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore. They moved on from Christian Kirk. Is there a hole here?
I don't think there's a hole. Not really. I don't hate the pick. Like, I don't think it's a bad move, but I don't really think that's the move they make.
Okay.
I think that they kind of have more need on defense. But I've been wrong before. So yeah.
You seem to be high on Jahan Dotson. Do you think he sneaks into the first round?
Yeah, I think he goes first round.
Based on what kind of abilities put him into the first round?
I have no idea. I don't know. I assume he goes first.
Maybe that intense speed. All right, next here we got Tyler Smith to the Dallas Cowboys. The theme on offensive tackle being selected by them continues. Now that Collins is gone, again, helping those running backs. Buffalo does something boring here, selecting a linebacker, adding to that killer defense. Nakobe Dean going to the Tennessee Titans is a good pick. I think here they can add to that defense. He's kind of a defensive alpha, so I like that pick. We have Kyle Gordon going to Tampa, not very fantasy relevant. The Packers selected defensive tackle, potentially creating a good run defense for the year. Travis Jones to the Kansas City Chiefs, not very fantasy relevant, but a good pick, and someone I believe I have mocked to them. And at number 30, the Seattle Seahawks have selected Matt Corral. Do you like this fit for the Seattle Seahawks potentially trading in the first round and having him compete with Drew Lock?
I love it. I'm all about it. I think that'd be awesome. I think I think it would show that the Seahawks aren't just gonna tank the year or kind of roll with Drew Lock and just get their top 5 pick next year. So I love it. I think it'd be awesome.
Okay, and would this put him in the discussion potentially being one of the top 2 rookie QBs, or is that firmly going to be with Pickett and Malik?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't think those 3 guys. I don't think you can. No, I think it puts him in the conversation. I do, because his only other competition there is Drew Lock. I mean, and then for the Steelers, whoever goes there is going to have to compete against Trubisky. Whoever goes to the Saints would have, if anyone goes to the Saints, would have to compete with Winston. I think the jobs that are most wide open right now would be Sam Darnold's and Drew Lock's, but I would say that Drew Lock's position is more available for the taking.
Now, see, this is an interesting discussion. Should these 3 teams these quarterbacks go to these prospective 3 teams, for the fact that the Panthers have decent weapons there. The Steelers have good weapons there for their potential future quarterback, and Seattle's got DK and Tyler Lockett. So there's good weapons on these teams. Yeah. They just need to fill the spot for quarterback. Yep. So it would be a very fun discussion to have for those rookie drafts coming up. So I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do if Matt Corral was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. It'd be very interesting.
It would be very fun to track throughout the season. So I'd be very excited to kind of see how that goes.
Okay, and then to round out this draft too, the Cincinnati Bengals selected George Karlaftis. And then at number 32, this seems to be a common theme with the Detroit Lions holding the last pick. A quarterback is being selected, Desmond Ridder. This, unfortunately, would not excite me as much as the other 3 quarterbacks potentially going to the Panthers, Steelers, and Seattle.
Yeah, I almost think this might be more of a kind of a signal to Jared Goff. You better get it together.
Might give him another year, see if he can work it out with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
What was your thought of Peter Schrager's draft?
I liked it. I liked both drafts. What is it? The first one did they both have like 4 quarterbacks going, or did that?
I believe so. Yeah. I believe it was both had 4.
I like it.
Who had the better of the 2 drafts? Was it Lance Zierlein's or Peter Schrager's?
I can say that I think I had more similarities with Schrager. Was Schrader's the second one we did?
Yes.
Yeah, I had more similarities for that, which probably means that Zierlein's is more accurate. But I think I liked Schrader's more.
Okay. And lastly, do you have any closing thoughts for the heckling fandom about the upcoming draft and the connection to fantasy football coming up?
No, not really. I'm just ready for it to happen already. I'm very excited. We're getting closer and closer. I can't wait for the Patriots to get to pick 21 and trade out of it. And made me have wasted 3 hours. But no, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a fun draft. And I think this is going to be one of the drafts, too, where there's going to be a ton of talent still. And it's every draft, but even more so this one. I think there's going to be a ton of talent day 2 and 3, especially with wide receivers, that will make it worth watching multiple rounds of this draft.
Not that it matters, because the New England Patriots will select some kid from a D3 school that we've never heard of anyway, and it'll be a guard. So you don't really have to worry about watching any of the days if you're a Patriots fan. But guys, if you like what you hear on Garbage Time Fantasy Football here, or ever want to get a comment in or leave us a voicemail, do it at www.garbagetimeff.com. Like and subscribe to the show below here on YouTube. You can listen to the show in any podcast format you can freaking think of. We are on Spotify, Apple, Google, Iheartradio, Tunein, Amazon, and many other locations where podcasts are offered. And again, guys, if you have any comments, you can find us on Instagram if you're shy and you'd rather leave a message there at Garbage Time Fantasy Football. You can also find us at Twitter at @garbage_timeff, where you can leave comments there. And any questions that you have, we are more than happy to bring them up on the show. If you want some advice too, we do that kind of stuff too. So again, like and subscribe. And tune in to the Sabotage Mock coming up in a few weeks. It is like Christmas around here, and you will really enjoy the pain that we endure going through that So without further ado, guys, have a great night. Draft is coming.